we can get out of this miserable heat and enjoy some time in the mountains. Well done. DL golf outing in August. Our next chapter breakfast meeting is on September 19th, and it'll be about data centers. Hopefully we've got enough power, at least in the room, to promote that discussion. Power in the region might be a problem. Couple of other chapter items. We started our NAIOP Pittsburgh PAC. More announcements to come on that. So another tool in our belt to try to get some advocacy things done and promote our economic development agenda. There's also a bill floating around being introduced by Senator Fontana at the state level to allow municipalities to expand their LRTAs from up to 10 years to 20. So low-hanging fruit, shouldn't be too controversial, but we'll see. Obviously, we're supportive, and we're happy to make some more updates on that as things go along. And the person that will probably be making those updates is David Caliguiri, who is hosting our breakfast this morning and moderating our two speakers. So you're not paying for it? Oh, well, David recently moved into the new group C&G Strategies. David is the C of C&G, so I assumed he was paying for this event, but I guess he's not. Many of you know David as kind of the tip of the spear in our advocacy efforts, and he's been with NAIOP Pittsburgh for a while, and we love having him. He's a huge asset to our organization, so please welcome David to the stage.
Well, maybe I'll pay a little bit after those. Nice introduction. Good morning, everyone. As Nate said, my name is David Caliguiri, and I have the pleasure of being NAIOP's advocacy representative. And for some of you folks in this room, I'm also the lobbyist. And for the cynical folks in this room, I will have you know that as a lobbyist, I rank just under Steve Mazza and the unions and just above contractors, developers, architects, and engineers. So that's all I've been told. Nate did a good job with my firm. I'm really not the C in C&G. It's actually communications and government relations, but I've told my mom that it's Caliguiri and group now, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So now to the reason why we're here, advocacy. We're going to have a fun, insightful conversation. It's not going to be political, at least we're going to try not to make it too political. Advocacy and policy does get a little dirty, so we'll try to keep it clean and neat. I want to introduce our two guests. We're very fortunate today to have two very accomplished individuals, both in government and in the private sector. First up, Aquiles Suarez. Aquiles is the Senior Vice President for Government Affairs for NAIOP, where he oversees the association's advocacy efforts at the federal, state, and local level. And he manages the association's Political Action Committee, NAIOP PAC. Let's put a pin in that, because we just started a PAC here in Pittsburgh, and just between you and I, we might need some help trying to convince folks to contribute to the PAC. So any tips you can provide would be great. Aquiles joined NAIOP in 2007 as the head of its Government Affairs Office. He has had several positions in the executive and legislative branches of government during his career in Washington, D.C., serving as Special Assistant for Domestic Policy to President George W. Bush and a member of the White House Domestic Policy Council during President Bush's first term. While at the White House, he worked on issues ranging from welfare reform, veterans' health care issues, housing, and economic development. Immediately prior to joining the White House Domestic Policy Office, Aquiles was senior counsel on the Financial Services Committee of the House of Representatives. And before working for Congress, Aquiles served as an attorney in the White House counsel's office during the administration of President George H.W. Bush and was a special assistant at the Department of Housing and Urban Development under Secretary Jack Kemp. And in addition to his government service, Aquiles has practiced real estate and corporate law in Miami, Florida, and Washington, D.C. He received his law degree from Columbia University Law School and his undergraduate degree from Georgetown. Welcome, Aquiles. Want to have a seat? Next up, we have Ben Kirshner. Ben is the first ever Chief Transformation and Opportunity Officer for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we'll get a definition as to what that means. In 2004, Ben founded Elite SEM, an award-winning digital performance marketing agency at the forefront of then the nascent industry. His agency delivered an average CAGR of 50% for 13 years from its inception and to its eventual sale to Mountain Gate Capital in 2017. Subsequently, 3 agencies were acquired. The firm grew from 150 employees to 700 employees, and in 2020, it was sold to New Mountain Capital. Today, there are over 1,200 employees around the U.S. Additionally, Ben's new disruptive vision for the company culture garnered numerous awards, including the #1 place to work in the U.S. for millennials, which was featured on the Today Show. I like the Today Show, that's pretty good. As well as top rankings in outlets like Entrepreneur Magazine, Inc. Magazine, Best Company to Work For, and Cranes. In 2018, Ben placed 12th by Glassdoor in ranking of Best CEO. For the past 2 years, Ben has taught digital marketing to second-year MBA students at Harvard Business School before joining the Shapiro administration. Please welcome Ben. Yeah, great. Thanks. All right, these are great. Guys, that is a really impressive background for both of you. So my first question then will be an easy one. And since today is advocacy, let's go with that. What brought you guys into these positions? I mean, such accomplished backgrounds, and here you are working in the nonprofit sector. Well, you're an association. Why did you get involved in advocacy?
Well, I think part of it is I fell into it, to be honest. I grew up, I'm Cuban American, grew up in Miami, and every Cuban American in Miami is political. If you have parents like I did, who left a communist country, there's no way you can escape that. So I was interested in politics. I went to Georgetown, studied international relations, and basically just was always interested in it. And when Jack Kemp ran for office, and I'm sure half the people here don't remember Jack Kemp, but he actually did run for president in '88. I worked on his campaign in Florida, and he lost. But then he became HUD secretary. So then I came up and, essentially worked at HUD. I liked policy. I liked politics. After a while, when you have a wife and 2 kids, government service pays only so much. And so in Washington, D.C., you fall into lobbying or some policy-oriented things. And really, we joke because once you do that, you can't go anywhere else. You're kind of stuck, right? Because that's kind of a unique city.
That's great. Ben, same to you. I mean, you've built successful tech companies, so.
Yes, thanks for the question. Thanks for having me today, everyone. So for me, I think I'm like a little weird. I just love weird stuff, like learning new things. So like I've always had like an itch to like do public service in one way or the other, civil service, and I didn't really know what that meant. And after I sold the company, I told then A.G. Shapiro, who I've known, and I grew up outside Philadelphia. So Governor Shapiro was our county commissioner, state rep, and A.G.'s have known him for a long time. And I said to him, I want to do public service. If you have any ideas, let me know. And he was at A.G. at the time. It was before he even ran for governor. And then he ran for governor. I joined his leadership team. I joined his transition team, helping him hire the secretaries for the administration. And at the end of that, process, he said to me, he called me one day, like 2 days before New Year's, and said, "Hey Ben, I traveled the Commonwealth. I met with all these business leaders in every area of the Commonwealth, and I heard the same thing. It's really hard to get permits. Our incentives suck. RACP is a mess. We're reactive. We're not proactive. Can you come and fix all the business issues in Pennsylvania?" And I was like, "Cool, yeah, sure." And he's like, "Great. You're going to be my business czar." I was like, whoa, easy on the czar title. Let me come back with something. So I came up with a friend helped me find the Chief Transformation title. And so if you Google Chief Transformation Officer, it's actually a perfect description of an entrepreneur. And a lot of Fortune 500 companies have Chief Transformation Officers. Virginia was actually the first state in the country to have a Chief Transformation Officer. And the person they hired was a McKinsey consultant. And that person took a really interesting track to go fix everything as a consultant would do. And myself being the second, took a different approach where I really wanted to make the North Star of fixing all these issues with a goal of making Pennsylvania a top 10 state to do business in. So my directive is really focused on business friendliness, business attractiveness, and business competitiveness. So that's what we started here.
That's great. Well, let's expand on that for a second, because it has been said that the Office of Transformation and Opportunity has been the one-stop shop for Pennsylvania businesses.
Yeah.
Right? Can you elaborate a little more and specifically tell us
sure.
what you're doing?
So basically, we came out with the North Star. So on my first day, I was like, all right, what do I need to do? I need to talk to you all to figure out what's wrong. I was also a victim from the private sector of horrible public service, right? So I got a tax credit for hiring people in 2013 that finally got paid to me in 2020. I was trying to buy a business, a foreign entity, a few years ago, and something that should have taken like a month took 8 months and cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars. So like I was a victim, but also I had about 15 offices. We had lots of offices in the U.S., but I operated in like 15 states. So I saw what good customer service, I saw what good economic development looked like, and I knew what bad economic development looked like. So I was in your shoes, totally, hated government. I was like, I want to fix this. So when I took the role, I had lots of meetings with Allegheny Conference, all the chambers, the engineers, the architects, everyone who kind of was really frustrated with government to learn what we need to fix. And so we bucketed it into 4 areas. The first area is this one-stop shop. There was never a way to connect the business, the private sector, to all the agencies. And you guys know this too well. If you wanted to go to if you need a DEP permit, an ag permit, a permit from DOS, you had to deal with L&I, and you had to deal with PennDOT. It was like 5 different phone calls, and there was no coordination. So what we did is we created this one-stop shop. So the way we did it is I actually hired 20-plus year veterans at all these agencies, promoted them to the governor's office, and now they're our coordinators. So these people know everyone who works in the agency at all the districts. They know how the levers are pushed. They know how the technology works. So they're experts, right? So these people get us answers, and we're going to be expanding this, and you're going to see an executive order hopefully in a few weeks, like solidifying this and really building a project management function for the Commonwealth, for businesses who want to interact in the Commonwealth. So that was kind of the first step of the office. The second one is we're very proud to work with Secretary Siger, who's, as you guys know, your hometown guy here, to work on the state's first economic development strategy in 20 years. So now we have a plan, a 10-year plan to invest in Pennsylvania and make Pennsylvania competitive again. One of the areas in the plan is government at the speed of business, which is what our office is doing. And I also want to give a shout out to Shivam Bareel, who's in my office, who's also a local Pittsburgh guy, left the private sector, come join the administration, who's great, and please don't poach him. Just want to give a... he's been instrumental to our success. So that was the first. Second was the dev strategy. Third is permit reform. So we came out, many of you guys have seen in November, we launched PA money back guarantee on all licensed permits and certifications. That was our big first initiative win last year. That is live and it's doing really, really, really well. And fourth is kind of fixing all the broken processes. So if there's broken processes that exist across multiple agencies, we're kind of the convener to bring everything together. So, and the fifth thing is data, right? So we're taking, this is where Shivam, that's why I mentioned Shivam, this is where Shivam has been really, really helpful. So for the first time, we're actually doing what you all do in the private sector, which is bringing data from our 22 agencies under our jurisdiction and bringing all the business-friendly KPIs and metrics to the governor's office. So now for the first time, we have insights into what is going on at these agencies and what needs to be fixed. Is it technology? Is it people? Is it reg? Is it legislative? Is it process? So we actually have data, historical data, thanks to Shivam, going through technology from 1994, pulling data out to figure out now we have a roadmap of what we need to fix in all these agencies. So that's kind of how we're going to get us into the top 10 now that we have, those are kind of the 5 areas we're working on.
I mean, that's great and it's exciting, and we could dive into that more, but I know we'll definitely have some questions from the folks in the audience who are finding their way through that whole permitting process and trying to navigate it as easy as possible, which I think we've all had some trouble in that in the future. Aquiles, so you're down in D.C., and D.C. is, it's an interesting place unto itself. Not a whole lot gets done, it seems like. There's, division amongst the parties themselves. There's a division in the White House. We've got an election in 6 months. Regardless of what happens this fall, how do you think about the opportunities and the threats facing the commercial real estate market in D.C. with the gridlock, the few bills that get through the legislature? You know, what priorities at NAIOP are you guys pursuing at a national level? And, you know, is there any hope for bipartisan support for the commercial real estate industry?
Yeah, that's pretty dark, the way you set that up. So I'll try to keep people happy. You know, we
I'm a very dark individual.
I'm a lobbyist, so I know where you're coming from.
Exactly.
You know, it's interesting. We have this year, for those of you who came to our chapter leadership retreat in February, we talked about 3 priorities. One would be a property conversion incentive at the federal government that we've been working on. And as I don't need to tell you folks, occupancy levels have been hit pretty hard by the pandemic. A lot of these Class B and C office buildings are not coming back. And so what do you do with these assets that are sitting in the middle of cities and frankly, suburbs and communities that are a drag on the finances of localities? And so I think there's a consensus that something should be done. You know, the free market folks would just prefer that prices drop so radically. But you're talking about a lot of economic dislocation, so that's not a great idea as well. So we've been pushing for this conversion bill that would create a 20% tax credit to allow or to pay for the eligible costs of converting a commercial building. It doesn't have to be just office. It could be anything to residential, and some of which would be reserved for affordable housing. Now, that's challenging in this environment, obviously, but we've gotten a lot of traction. We expect this bill to be introduced next week. Mike Kelly, your congressman, is an extremely important member of the Ways and Means Committee and Congress. So you folks are sitting in the catbird seat in terms of advocacy for not just at the local level, but for us on tax policy. So make sure that you communicate with Kelly that you're supportive of this. Our NAIOP chairman, Brian Walker, has already been bending Kelly's ear on this at lunch. And so I think we're doing very well on that. The other thing that we really focused on was commercial credit. And you know, the Fed had raised interest rates 11 times in this short span of time. I think it was the steepest increase since 1979 when Volcker was the Fed chairman. And in this environment, that was a killer for commercial real estate lending. So unfortunately, the Fed was moving to create regulations that would make it even worse based on Basel III kind of technical terminology, but it would make capital less available. We fought that. We pretty much won that. The Fed has backed off a little bit on that. So we've been successful in that. And then the third, and as a lobbyist you'll understand this, third is really educational. We have, in 2025, the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the Trump tax bill, which was a Republican-only legislative accomplishment. So there's not a lot of bipartisan support for it. You know, a lot of those provisions expire in 2025. In fact, a lot of provisions that would affect commercial real estate, capital gains, ordinary income rates, the 20% pass-through deduction. You know, the Biden administration's proposed getting rid of Section 1031 like-kind exchanges. It's proposed taxing unrealized capital gains. So, you know, in the estate tax context, that would mean that if someone had a building for 20 years, the minute a person passed away, that asset would be taxed, all of the appreciation immediately, and then the estate tax would be imposed after that. So there's a lot of big implications. Lobbyists in D.C. are calling it Taxmageddon, and the lobbying has already begun. But just from an educational standpoint, again, this is in 2025. Why are we talking about it now? Out of the 435 members of Congress, only 83 Republicans are there now that were there in 2017. And on the Ways and Means Committee, there are only 5 Republicans who were there when this bill was passed. So they don't know a lot of these provisions that affect commercial real estate. And so we need to really, move in that direction. So that's what we've been working on this year. And in terms of the outlook, here's the thing about politics, and I think you've seen this as well. What you see on camera sometimes is not the reality of people's relationships behind camera. Unfortunately, D.C. has gotten a little bit worse because now there are politicians who actually believe what they're saying on TV, whereas before they would just say it because they were playing a political game. But NAIOP and commercial real estate has a lot of support among Democrats. Mike Thompson from California, big supporter of 1031s. Richie Neal is someone who understands, and he's was the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee as a Democrat. They're supportive of us. They can work with us. So it behooves us to really stay involved with both sides of the aisle. The ugly part is when you get into these fights where a compromise that used to be a legislative victory and was something that politicians could tout, now compromise hurts you if you're a politician, at least at the federal level. And ironically, this is my political scientist hat, but a lot of this really gets back to the whole financing and redistricting and the fact that the parties and society has become more polarized, and that's reflected in how people get elected. And so if you're more polarized, then it's an all or nothing approach. You got to defeat the other side. Anything you do that where you compromise and you go to the middle now hurts you. And so that's made my job a lot harder.
So you mentioned real quick that Mike Kelly is been very influential in some of the policies that you're championing. And you also mentioned to everybody that we should reach out. Can you just touch upon the importance of the folks in this room to be engaged and to advocate on behalf of these issues and, pick up the phone and call or write a letter? How important is that? I mean, does the voice in this room, do these voices matter?
Yeah, and it's funny because I call myself a cynic. I'm actually more of a realist, and I do appreciate the incentives that people operate in government, in the legislature. And as the funny thing is, and don't get offended, Brian, but one of the things that we as lobbyists know, you get a CEO who's used to having his or her orders followed, and they can't understand why it's so hard to do anything in Washington. And there's an old saying that Washington is the only place where you can agree on 90% of something and it doesn't get done. And that's just the reality. And it's because people are operating under different incentives, right? And so a CEO comes in and starts telling a congressman, this is what you need to do, and this is what's in your political interest. And the congressman is thinking, this guy is an idiot, and they don't like to be lectured because their political incentives are keeping the constituents happy and making sure that they don't get outflanked on the right or the left. They have a totally different mindset. And in the legislative context, everything that congressmen do in the House or the Senate is a measure of what political capital you are expending. So little things like, hey, can you call this person and talk through this issue? Well, they get into the thinking is, and this sounds very petty, which it is, but well, I'm not going to call them because then I'm asking for a favor, and so you get into these discussions. So they want the lobbyists to do a lot of this communication and work,
All the dirty work.
And so, to your point, congressmen, the media says money in politics, and you get this narrative, and the reality is, congressmen and congresswomen, senators need money to get their message out, but their goal is votes, right? Journalists want a story, businessmen want profits, and politicians want votes. If you remember those three things, so the money is just secondary. So PACs, PACs are important in the sense of we communicate what's important to the industry, right? But the congressman, the elected official, cares about what's important to the constituents. So when you call and you say, hey, this conversion bill could really help us do things in Pittsburgh, that resonates with them. And we just go in and give the data and all that, give them the tools to make it happen. But there's nothing more important than constituent input with elected officials.
That's great to hear. Also, the PAC is very important, and funding the PAC.
I mean, it just is. It is, and it's, if you think about, you can take a potential business partner or someone that you are want to be involved with in terms of business, you can take them to lunch. I can't do that. I can't take anyone to lunch in Congress because you have these ethics rules. So the only way sometimes that these folks would see me is at a fundraiser or a reception. And so it doesn't buy votes, but the reality is it does buy you some access. It's like advertising. And so it is important in that sense.
So, Ben, in Pennsylvania, we also have a divided government. We're actually the only legislature that's divided between Republicans and Senate, with the Republicans owning the Senate and the Democrats owning the House. As the governor's point person on sort of like, economic development and keeping our cities moving and growing, how do you, what keeps you up at night working with the legislature? How do you, how do you see yourself and your role in working within that frame?
Yes, it's a good question. I try to stay away from that.
Good point.
That's it. No, so look, I think this place has been running. I think, as you all know, in the private sector, data is the information highway, and helps us all make better decisions. And in the past, I don't think we've had a lot of it available to us. So what we're doing, what Shivam and I are doing, is bringing the data to our colleagues who are working with the legislature to show them what's going on and where we should be investing and why we should be investing, and that we're good stewards. Our administration are actually good stewards of money. So whether it's DCD, whether it's housing, whether it's workforce development, whatever it is, whether even RACP or movie credits, whatever it is, right? We're trying to bring the transparency, the data, and the measurement to the discussion, where instead of saying, one person says, movie tax credits are great, another person says they're not great. Well, how do you figure this out? So data is the way you figure out. And so we're bringing that to the discussion in a lot of the areas that that are the governor's priorities.
Yeah. So I know we would definitely want to open this up to questions in a few minutes, but I guess just sort of one last question, and you guys are kind of touching upon this, but it's really important. I think we need to impress upon this. How can we help you guys? Help us? Help you? What's the best way for us, for your office, Ben, for us to work together so that, what we need to do to grow Pennsylvania, we can do that together?
Sure. So it's not too dissimilar, but we just heard, lobbying your local reps, right? So. Yeah. Just to give you guys some background, we had the first site selector conference in the governor's residence this past fall, where we brought the top 17 site selectors to Harrisburg, and we brought them in front of the cabinet, and the intention was for us to learn from the site selectors what we need to do to win. What are other states doing? The way I described to Gov. Shapiro when we first got into office after I had all these feedback sessions, I was like, all right, Gov, here's the deal. There's a 5-on-5 game going on. He's a big sports guy, very competitive. There's a 5-on-5 basketball game going on for deals, and then there's a bench with 5, states on each. So there's 20 people in the game for real big deals. I go, we're in the locker room. We're not even on the playing field. That's where Pennsylvania is today, and we need to change that. And that's what he's doing in this ECDEV strategy that we just rolled out. So I can't tell you how many of the site selectors came up to me from this little conference and said, I've met 50 or 60 governors. I mean, I go to every governor house throughout the country, and I've met every governor. This is the first governor who didn't sell me, who actually cared and listened and learned. And what we got from their feedback was what we're now pushing in for Secretary Seiger's initiatives, which is the PA Sites Plan, which is the largest investment in Pennsylvania history into sites, which is great for this room being commercial real estate. So the sites program was a $10 or $20 million a year program. We're asking for $500 million, and this is our year 1 of 10 initiative. We don't have any big, massive pad-ready sites for big mega deals that are going to create a lot of jobs. And so Governor Shapiro heard it from the site selectors. We showed him what other states are doing, investing in this realm, and that's our big ask. So for this year's economic development agenda, we are asking for $500 million from the legislature to actually invest in building pad-ready sites throughout the Commonwealth. It is so needed if we want to compete. Because what keeps me up at night is all the data that we learn from the economic development strategy, which is, today 1 in 4 Pennsylvanians are over 60, and by 2030 or 35, it's going to be 1 in 3. We have housing issues, we have transportation issues, we just have a lot of issues, but we have to start somewhere. So sites is the first, and then our plan in the next few years is start really investing in the areas of the plan. And you guys can read the plan. It's at pagetitsitdone.com, and you can read the plan. It's very precise, very good. And you can see all the industries that we're focusing on, what we're doing, how we're doing it, and the time frame we're doing it. So that's, I would say, similar. Call your local reps, support Secretary Seigers. Economic development plan is really what we need to get the ball rolling.
No, that's great. So let's open it up for questions. And if nobody has any questions, we're going to do this in the Socratic method. And I'm just going to start calling on people. So who has a question? All right. Come on, Aaron. Do you have the mic?
I think my voice is loud enough. Hi, my name's Aaron Roach. I'm with Hillis Carnes Engineering Associates. It's partly a comment followed by a question. One, I think most of us need to realize we need to be patient, especially with you and your team, Ben, because you're trying to push a glacier uphill with changing government and how things get done. So I think that's one thing that we all do need to realize and appreciate, that Rome wasn't built in a day. It's going to take a little bit of time. How much of the problems, though, that you will encounter or are encountering and trying to make change are things that you can do on an executive level with executive authority, and how much of it is going to require legislative change and law changes and working with our legislature to get things through? Counting the $500 million, we're going to need the legislature because of the budget, but what other things will we need to do?
It's a great question. So what we did in our first, and this is great news for all of you. In Governor Shapiro's first week in office, he created 4 executive orders. One of the 4 was creating my office. Another one was permit reform, right? First week, like 2 days after I didn't even know what an executive order was. And I was there in front of a camera, and then next thing I know, there's a permit reform executive order, and then they're like, yeah, you're doing this. I'm like, great, cool. So let's do it. So we worked with our Office of General Counsel, policy leaders, a whole huge team effort, and we cataloged in the first 60 days over 2,400 permits, licenses, and certification across 22 agencies. And we gave basically a report card to each secretary identifying what is wrong with each and every single permit. And we basically bucketed into 5 areas: HR, we have staffing shortages, technology, regulation, legislation, and process improvement. So immediately it was here's process improvements. And by the way, we got all that information from the people who work in the agencies. So it wasn't like me playing, Mr. Consultant and telling them what to do. It's these are the people who gave us, if we change the way we do this, things will get better. So year 1 was all about getting HR fixed, because we had look, there's a 3.4% unemployment rate in the Commonwealth. You guys are all experiencing it. We're experiencing it at the state level. We're not the world's highest payer, right? So it's hard. There's a lot of turnover. A lot of people are retiring. A lot of young people aren't necessarily going into government. So we have some major holes in people. And credit to Secretary Weaver, who's Secretary of Office of Administration and handles OA and IT and HR. Him and his team went crazy and started changing some rules around hiring and taking it from 80 days to 60 days to get someone onboarded. And the other thing we took from this experience is we now identified, instead of looking at vacancy at an agency, so instead of saying 2,000 people vacancies at PennDOT, and not being necessarily the most strategic about who we're hiring, we actually identified how many of those are actually permitting people. So now we're measuring permitting vacancies versus just overall vacancies. And now we're focused on getting the permitting people done first. So that was year one. Year two, we just started the technology transformation. We're also doing the ledge and regs. Process improvement already happened. So to your point that Rome's not built today, we are making amazing progress. I'll tell you what, like Governor Shapiro and his secretaries deserve a ton of credit, right? So Governor Shapiro, as the CEO of the state, takes the flashlight and puts a spotlight on permitting. Then the secretaries then take that and flash it internally in the agencies. And so I actually thought it was gonna be a lot harder. I'm not saying it was easy. I'm just saying that like the amount of people who are rowing in the right direction for this is incredible. And at least at the senior level, senior staff levels, we're not getting pushback, right? We came in as an approach of like, what do you need to be successful? We didn't come in and say, you stink, you stink, you stink. We said, what do you need to be successful? And we heard amazing things like in the Department of Education, where it used to take like 12 weeks to get your teacher certification. So you graduate, you try to get a job, and it took 12 weeks at the state to get it, is now like less than 3. And we said, why is that? And they go, oh, well, in 2008, we had 20 people doing it. Now we have 8. Well, if we got, how many do you really need? If you got us another 8 people, we could actually get these done in 3 weeks. Great. Let's go get you 8 people. Call it Secretary Budget. Here's what they need, right? So it's a lot of these things were like easy fixes, just no one ever shined a spotlight on it. Like previous administrations just like didn't make it a priority. Our governor today is making ECDev and permitting in the business community a priority, right? So credit to him, credit to all the secretaries who took it and ran with it and are doing amazing work. I mean, I get, when I do stuff like this, staffers come up to me all the time, like on both sides of the aisle, and they're like, you know, you guys are doing, what you guys have done is incredible. Our phone calls from constituents complaining have dropped precipitously. Like we're not getting calls anymore. Unemployment claims was like big one. It used to take 8 weeks if you're unemployed. It takes like 2 days to get your money now. And Governor Shapiro just honored that whole staff with the Governor's Excellence Award for fixing that entire process from 8 weeks to 2 days. Business licenses in the Department of State, if you wanted to be an entrepreneur, apply for a business license, you take 8 weeks. And I'm like, 8 weeks? I was like, we're not paying, these people are trying to start a business and pay the Commonwealth. We're making them wait 8 weeks to do business into Pennsylvania? This is craziness, right? Now it's down to 2 days, right? So it's everyone is rowing in this direction. Governor Shapiro, being the great leader he is giving people accolades, kudos, doing the right things as a CEO should do to make this stick. And I think we're getting into a great place. And now we're focusing on how do we make this last? So beyond our administration, how do we make a lot of these things we're doing stick in the long term? And that's where my mind is thinking of doing.
Hi, it's Patrick Conley with Berkshire Hathaway. I think it's easy to get caught up in the things that are broken or the things that need fixed or the things that are challenges, our population, our demographic, our assets. But what opportunities do you see? What strengths do you see from the state level right now that you feel that we do have and the opportunities to capitalize on the near term and long term with what we have in place?
So one of the coolest stats that I saw in planning and working on the ECDev strategy was there's a crazy stat. Like we graduate 190,000 people a year in Pennsylvania from all of our universities. We have an incredible university system, schools, eds, meds, you've heard it before, 190,000 people a year. We've never engaged the universities to keep these people in Pennsylvania. So many come to Pennsylvania, get educated, and then leave, right? So we are actually putting a strategy in place and a plan in place. Part of it's through the higher ed plan that was released, but part of it is through DCD and our ECDev strategy, is to figure out and work with these schools, like whether it's an incentive, whether it's just like the right thing to do, civic pride, figuring out ways to get these people to stick here is probably like one of the biggest eye-opening assets that we have, besides energy and lots of other great assets we have here in Pennsylvania. I think that's kind of an untapped potential of something we've never really focused on. And when we ask the universities, all the universities, from the Apache schools to the privates, the Penns, the Carnegies, everyone, community colleges, like, could you do this? And Secretary Sager, coming from higher ed, like has a lot of thoughts on this as well. Can you do this? And they're like, yeah, we would love to help. We love Pennsylvania. We want to do this. So I think that's probably, for me, one of the most untapped resources we haven't taken advantage of that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, if I could comment on that as well. Just part of my role is to oversee our state and local function as well. And we play a supportive role. Our chapters determine the priorities, but we try to be supportive. But just in terms of comparing Pennsylvania to other states, I mean, California is a mess in terms of regulatory. I mean, they for the first time in their history, they actually have people leaving. And I remember 10 years ago, I had a regional summit out there, and my members were complaining, and I said, all right, so there's so many problems, why are you still here? And they gave me some kind of rationales which didn't seem all that real to me. And then one of them came up after and said, you know why I stay here? Because I can go ski in the mountains and in the same day go surfing with my son later on. And so California had these built-in assets. Well, now people are actually saying that's not enough. They can't afford to buy a house. Fossil fuels in California, Colorado, it's bad. Anything involving fossil fuels is bad. So they're coming up with all these regulations that are really forcing businesses to move elsewhere. So you folks have, I think Pittsburgh was rated as the most affordable place to live recently. So I think there's some things that are coming to the fore that might help you if you have a coordinated marketing campaign and effort.
Yeah, when I hear from site selectors or large companies who are considering to move to Pennsylvania, it's really three things they care about. They're like, we want incentives, we need workers, and we need permits, fast permits. And I'm like, great, like you can't, we have the workers, right? We have amazing workforce here. Incentives, we can build easily if we pass legislation and decide that Pennsylvania wants to be in a game of economic development. The governor always talks about Ohio. Ohio spends $2 billion a year in economic development. We spend about $300 million a year. Like, we're just not in the game, right? So we can fix that easily. And then permits, we can easily fix. Like, that's what Shivam and I are doing. Like, we can fix that. And so, like, we are going to get in the game and get on the field by just fixing permits, having incentives, and we have a built-in workforce. And that's a huge competitive advantage over a lot of other states.
But, I think to give you credit, if you're fixing permits, it's not as easy as it sounds. I mean, it should be. Right, but in my first experience in government is a lot of the processes are there because there are vested interests who want those checks and balances along the way. And so, for example, in Australia, it takes 2 years to build a major infrastructure program. And they have very, very tough environmental laws. Here, it takes 10 to 15 years, right? And why is that? It's because at every step of the way, you have some group that can sue the government and stop progress. And so when I was at HUD, for example, I mean, HUD had the worst reputation, right? And Jack Kemp was a do-it guy, and he's like, he wanted to get things fixed. And we were constantly doing things through regulation, which required that the reg be drafted and that it be sent to the Office of General Counsel, and people were on vacation. So these regs would back up and stay there. And so just to get money out, if you had a grant program, just to get money out would take years to develop. And so I was sitting there going, why does this happen? And what I found out was that in '79, when Jimmy Carter's administration lost to Ronald Reagan, they passed a regulation known as the Reg on Regs. And the Reg on Regs said that whenever HUD does anything, you have to go through the regulatory process. And the reason for that was because the interest groups, the housing interest groups, wanted to be at the table at every single step of anything that HUD did because they didn't trust the incoming Republicans. And so it was a political thing. And once it was in there, try taking it away. And so you do deserve a lot of credit because it is a lot harder, and people don't understand kind of the underbelly, let's say, of what motivates government and politics.
Yeah, go ahead.
Morning.
Hold on 1 second. With Paul first.
Good morning. Okay. Good morning, Paul Messinio, Alan and Sharif, MEP engineers. The key is always have a backup question because my question was going to be, what's a bad state to do business in? That's California. And what's one that spent a lot of money on economic development, which is Ohio. So my backup question is on transportation and infrastructure. So hopefully I'm not stealing Lynn DiLorenzo's question because she asked about transportation a lot as well. This is all modes of transportation. From a Pennsylvania standpoint or federal, is there any appetite for legislation for more funding? Today at 10 a.m., I believe, they're doing a report locally on structurally deficient bridges in Pittsburgh. So,
Yeah, I'm not a transportation expert by any means, but I can talk from the economic development angle. Like, the whole point of the sites program that we're going for, this $500 million pot of money, the way we envision it working is it's going to be a competitive grant process. So as developers, you look at projects, you buy the land, you look at the environmental remediation that has to happen, whatever. This is a program where you can come to, whether it's transportation issues, sewer, water, electric, whatever the issue is that's precluding you from developing this site that could have a huge economic impact, right? We want to be your partner to help you offset that risk of doing the project. So you can imagine a project where someone says, hey, if you give us I had a meeting a few weeks ago or a month ago outside Reading where they're like, if you write me a check today for $2 million, I will have 1,000 union employees on this site, and this will create $50 billion of economic development over the next 30 years. Just give me $2 million. Like, we've tapped out our banks, we've tapped out our lenders, I've put all, right? And so this is the idea of this money to help ignite economic development. So, imagine the Poconos, they have a major housing issue there. Housing developers, when they look to develop, and every housing developer knows, like, yes, there's a housing issue there I would love to develop, but then they look at the cost of what it costs to construct and what they need to get in there, the math doesn't work. They can come to us and say, hey, if you give us $5 million or $15 million, we can do all this infrastructure. Not only will we build all these housing, but now there can be economic development, pad-ready sites, more commercial development up there because of this money. It's kind of like, think of it like VC money for the real estate industry, right? So the transportation, transportation is part of every economic development project. And this is like the power of this PA sites is to really, it's really under economic development, but instead of PennDOT, but the idea is to empower economic development projects through infrastructure. That's kind of the way we're thinking about it, and making it, throughout the Commonwealth and every part of the Commonwealth. So that investment is ultimately going to fix a bridge, right? There could be someone who says, if you fix this bridge, here's the economic impact Pennsylvania is going to have. And my goal in doing this is to create a program that shows the legislature this is a good investment, it's measurable, and we should have sustainable funding. This shouldn't be like a one-time done, pot of money and then we don't do it again. If it's working, right, and hopefully we'll make the right choices of projects that do work. If it's working, we should have a self-sustaining fund to keep doing this, and keep doing this. And then a lot of our infrastructure will get fixed. A lot of our transportation projects will get fixed because you have to, as you all know, you have to spend money to make money.
Good morning, Lynn DiLorenzo. Thank you, Paul, for handling the transportation question. I wanted to applaud you for the site selectors, gathering the site selectors. For those of you that may not know this, in 2007, this chapter worked with the Allegheny Conference, who had FAM tours back at that time and brought national site selectors here. We had a program with at least 200 people attending where we asked the national site selectors, what are we doing wrong? It was very bold, it was very humbling, and we were very nervous about it. But it was everybody kind of got a little bit more at ease when they said, well, geez, guys, that's really easy. Your airport's not on an interstate. Like, get it on an interstate. Because the site selectors, their number one job, they said that day, was to eliminate. All we want to do is eliminate. You made it so easy for us to eliminate. So get your stuff together here. And we won't be eliminating you as quickly. So I applaud that. We learned a lot from those site selectors, and sometimes going back to the basics of what you're doing is so critical. So when you gather that data and can provide it here, I'll be curious as to what else we can do to improve this region.
No, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thanks, gentlemen. Nate Phillips again, NAIOP Pittsburgh. A question for both of you. Achilles at CLLR in February gave a presentation on the DOE funding into basically reshoring or onshoring large projects that had a renewable energy focus. A lot of federal grants out there. The Pittsburgh Regional Alliance had a program last week that spotlighted some of the programs that are, or applications that are going in. Actually, I think this week for several $100 million in tax credits to bring renewable energy manufacturing, batteries, large-scale batteries. but primarily manufacturing projects. So for both of you, Achilles, at the federal level, is there an appetite for more investment, across party lines at that level to make it sustainable? A lot of these projects that have a 3-year window that they need to get built, and that by definition makes some of them not even feasible just from an infrastructure standpoint. And then for Ben, how is Pennsylvania positioning probably our larger sites to try to tackle and attract more of these types of programs?
You asked what keeps me up at night. A number of things, but one of them is what my members talk to me about, and something that I don't have an answer to, and that is energy. That has become the limiting factor in development. It used to be I can talk about taxes, I can talk about permitting, all these things that developers know how to talk about, but when you're being told that you can't use fossil fuels, but the utility in your area, that's what they give you, it's not your fault, right? But yet we're dealing with ordinances that are imposing these unrealistic mandates that cost a lot of money. And in Colorado, there's something called Regulation 28, which is terrible. It's basically fining. We'll start fining developers for not meeting certain requirements that they can't meet. And so I had one person come up to me and said, I had a building that it would be fined $15 million. And we're talking about this move toward electrification, right? Everything's got to be electrified. So you can't have natural gas. You need to build out EV structures. And so there's this, not populist, but this desire among a lot of folks to, basically get rid of fossil fuels and any use. They're trying to use every single lever that they have to force that. But ultimately, it gets back to how are you producing this energy, right? And to your point, yeah, there's a lot of folks who support renewable energy, but there's also a lot of folks on the other side of the aisle who want to drill for oil and continue the fossil fuel industry. And that's a real political problem. Because if we all agreed that we wanted to move in one direction, then we can do things in a rational approach. But if we don't all agree that we're moving in it, then each side's going to stop whatever is being done. So that's a problem. Your question, is there broad agreement? I don't think there is. I think there might be, on the surface, people talk like, it's not, a few exceptions. People in Congress don't deny climate change. Some do, but they don't. But there's more of a realistic sense that we can't transform, to use your word, that quickly. And so I don't know how to answer that. That's what keeps me really nervous about policy, because I don't have an answer for it.
Have any of you guys met Brian Regley at this state? Any show of hands? Have anyone talked to Brian? Yeah, a few of you. So Brian is my coworker, colleague. We actually literally physically share an office. So he's like 2 doors down from me. So Brian's role, he also started on the first week or day of the administration like me. And his role is in charge of getting as many federal funds. So he is a free service. You guys can call his office, and he helps pull down the federal fund grants to Pennsylvania. His job is to get as many federal dollars into Pennsylvania as possible. And we have great relationships with all of the secretaries at the federal level, great relationship at the federal level. So he's talking directly to the program people in the federal government to get all the IIJA money, IRA money for these big, massive projects. So if you guys, if it's a resource you didn't know about, you can get in touch with me and through you, and I can connect you with his office, and they're great. And that's literally what their job is, to help pull funds down federally.
Hey, I have a quick question for Achilles. So you've heard everything that Ben is doing and his office is doing and transforming, the way we do business here in Pennsylvania, and I think we're on the right track. You travel all around the country. You see what states are doing right, not right. Not to put you on the spot, but are we are we missing anything, or is there anything that we should enhance doing? Or, you know, from your perspective, like what can we do better here in Pennsylvania?
You know, some states just have, again, like California, built-in assets, right? It's the Mediterranean climate out there, right? Everyone loves to live there. I think Pennsylvania has a lot of strong assets that you can sell toward businesses. I think, and you know, this is a nonpartisan panel here. I think Josh Shapiro gets a lot of good reviews on the Republican side as being someone who is rational. Now, I don't know whether that's because in Pennsylvania you have a Republican Senate and it affords you the ability to actually use them as a foil and stay more toward the middle and not get pulled to the extremes. But regardless, I think that's a selling point for the Commonwealth. You know, I don't know that I can answer that question other than, you know, keep your taxes again, don't use the tax code to punish people. You know, you see some of that in states like New York, frankly. Massachusetts, we have you know, our largest chapters in Massachusetts, and they have huge issues. At some point, it's going to catch up with them. But you know, every state has its own problematic you know, realities. Texas, power, believe it or not, Texas, oil state. They're trying to electrify. They can't do it. Florida has insurance issues because of hurricanes. So I think you guys can hold your own.
I'll say I can answer the question. So, like, if you look at the CNBC top 50 state rankings, the reason I chose that is our office's North Star. It's because it has all the answers right there. We know which states are the top 10. Some of them have just like they just been focusing on this for a lot longer. Like, frankly, like we just haven't. Pennsylvania just, if you look at the past administrations, you know, everyone has great intentions, but it hasn't been a focus. Economic development, bringing businesses here, is something like, we all want to do, but like it's never been a focus. And so the other states who are on that top 10 list, they've been doing it forever. I mean, Ohio sold their liquor business like 20 years ago, privatized it, and took all the money and put it in economic development. And so for like since like 2011 or 2010, they've been putting $2 billion a year into the ground in Ohio to be where they are today, right? We don't even have, if you look at, we're not even out of the gate yet. Like we're asking for our first $500 million from the legislature, which we didn't even get yet because the budget didn't pass, right? So those states have just been very purposeful. And what Shivam and I and all the people on our team, like we talk to every other state who's doing this. And we talked to Virginia has their transparency initiative. We've talked to Maryland. We talked to all the states to see what they're doing to find out what could we be doing better? What can we learn from? What should we be doing? And frankly, like I'm getting all the calls from all these states. How did you guys do permit reform? Like we're teaching them how to do it now, which is a nice, flattering thing to do. But in any case, we're always looking, we're always learning. But I feel like we will get there. It's not, to your point before, it's like we've had 20, 30, 40 years of doing something one way. You can't just flip the switch overnight. We're a year and a half into our administration. Hopefully we have, you know, more time here to get the things done. We're starting the technology transformation. So when we look at permitting, yes, we can't change all the regulations, and I totally agree with you, but we can give you predictability. We can give you service. We can give you a portal to log into to see where you are in your permit and how long should it take for you to get a response, not what you guys experience today, which is, oh, you submit an application, you wait till day 89, so you wait 3 months, and they go, oh, it's deficient. Like, that's just not acceptable. Like, we can do better. We can do better through technology. We can do better with process improvement, right? That's not a regulation. That's just like a timing and predictability that we can fix, and we are fixing. And Secretary Charlie's credit, she's doing that, right? We're having pre-meetings now with DEP. We got the permitting people at DEP, the vacancy rate down 40%. 40%. So, like, we're hiring more people. We're focusing on it. So, like, things are going to get better. It's going to take some time. I hope to come back here towards the end of our term and like talk about all the great wins and accomplishments. But like we have a lot of people rowing in the right direction and working on these things to make it easier and better with the regulations in place. Because I totally agree with you. And there's a great podcast I listened to, Ezra Klein's podcast on permitting. Actually, I mean, I care about that. Maybe you guys probably would. This audience probably would. It's really interesting, and it talks about how it costs like $10 million to build one bathroom stall in California, right? Where it should cost, like, from your perspective, like you guys can build a bathroom out here, it costs you like $300,000, but it costs like $10 or $20 million. It's called the $20 million bathroom in California. Public one, like literally one toilet in a park in California. Why? And it comes back to the regulations and the special interest groups who are putting things in place. So
I think we have one more question.
Yes.
Thanks very much. Brett Walsh, Hewlett Properties. I have a question specifically with respect to downtown development and incentives for downtown development. I see that there's a bipartisan bill. The Democrat on it is Senator Saville out of Philadelphia to raise the historic preservation tax credit. We talk about being competitive with neighboring states. That's one where we're woefully, underfunded for that particular tax credit with a cap of $5 million when our neighbors have $100 million. I see programs like Main Street Matters. I wanted to ask about that, or any other programs that can help people like me convert buildings downtown in what we're seeing obviously a spiraling downward tax base for commercial buildings and a lot of opportunity to convert into residential.
yeah, no, it's a great question. So we get it from we get it from pretty much everyone, that same question. Governor Shapiro, being the great CEO and leader, has tasked a lot of his secretaries with doing plans, strategic plans. There haven't been strategic plans in a lot of these areas. So we have a strategic plan for economic development. We're going to have a strategic plan for housing. We just came out with our strategic plan for aging. We came out with our strategic plan for energy. We came out with our strategic plan for higher ed. And there's a bunch more in the works, labor and industry, ag, there's a few others in the works. But to address these issues, right? And the strategy is to bring everyone together, right? From labor, both people from both sides of the party, all the stakeholders, if you will, of passing and investing in these types of matters. So we are in the process of doing that. We hear it. I don't have information on the bills. I try to stay out of that stuff. I'm kind of the guy, like, if you get the money, like even RCAP, like if you guys get the money, I'm the guy like gets you the money faster, but I'm not like the guy who decides if you get it or not. Like I was asked if I want to be on that committee and I was like, no thanks. So I got out of that. But if you guys do get it, like I'm the one who helped make the application go from like 10 tabs or 20 tabs to 10 tabs and put it online. This is all the new one, right? So Governor Shapiro and Secretary Steiger are very, very focused on this in the budget. Main Street Matters is also getting a big boost. And they hear it, right? There's a lot of real estate developers throughout the Commonwealth who are in both of their ears about this issue all the time. Even the local politicians, mayors of these cities are looking for help for it. And I think there's something federally going on because, like, ultimately, like, no one's opposed to this, but it's just really expensive. How do you pay for it? So it's definitely top of mind. It's not like I don't have an answer for yes, no, but I will say that, like, it's not like doesn't seem that controversial. It seems like just my personal perspective, it seems like how is he being paid for? Where are we getting the money to pay for all this? Because if you do pay for it, well, you're pulling it out from somewhere else, right? So that's where and maybe some of the PA sites money could help with these conversions, right? Because if it's economic development, it's all to be determined. Once again, we need the budget passed. We need the legislators to pass. I think the biggest takeaway, if you talk to your legislators, like, we need to invest in economic development, right? In this first budget, the PA sites is $500 million. There's Main Street Matters money. There's increases and bumps in all the programs. And the other thing we're doing that's a huge disadvantage that we learned from the site selectors, when we ask them, like, what's wrong, and we got a lot of feedback from them. Do you know in DCD, we have 196 programs. We have $300 million to give out. We have 196 programs. Right? So one of the things we're doing now is reevaluating all of those programs, seeing if they should be killed, some should be doubled down, some should be merged. but that's part of the exercise of DCD 2.0 that we're going through right now to rebuild DCD, invest in it. Also in this year's budget is a huge increase for DC. Just to give you an idea, like Jobs Ohio has 400 people doing economic development outreach. They inbound sales, outbound sales, the whole thing, right? 400 people doing the job of bringing economic development into Ohio. Take a guess how many Pennsylvania has? 30. Right? So we have not, this agency has not been invested in like our peer states from a money, from a people standpoint. And so that's what we're working on this year's budget. We have a big ask for, we need, because if we get all this money and legislate, yeah, here's billions of dollars, go give it out. Like we don't have the people to actually process and do it. So year one is like building the infrastructure. By year 10, we're going to be, a really, really, well-oiled machine as we do it. So, and I do want to say, because I know we're out of time, our office is here to help anyone. A size does not matter. If you need customer service from the Commonwealth, if you need a question from DEP, if you need a pre-meeting from PennDOT, whatever issues you have, look at our office as kind of the customer service outlet for you to get you answers in a timely response manner. If you're working on a project and you have a question you want to talk to DEP about, we can help you with that. A lot of our coordinators that work from these agencies know the answers, or they know people who have the answers. So I'll give you my email, and if you want to write it down, because we don't have like a slide, it's not on there. It's just it's B and then my last name, Kirshner @pa.gov. So if any of you guys have projects, you need anything, I'm happy to help you guys. I'll connect you with the people internally. So I just want to make sure everyone knew that, because I do have to run out right after this to another meeting. So.
Well, thank you both so much. This was wonderful. Do you have any last parting thoughts?
Who's your congressman over there? Mike Kelly? Tell him to support our conversion bill. That's
so we're
my
here to
parting
help
thought.
you. Yeah, that's right. That's a great point. These folks have some great connections with our members in Congress. So we're here to help you. And thank you both so much for your time today. Appreciate it.